Passing is the most difficult skill to master, but in this video, my goal is to make passing super simple for you guys. If you implement these 7 secret passing tips, you'll be throwing way less interceptions, throwing way more touchdowns, and winning way more games. So if that's something you're interested in, then let's get started. So secret passing tip number 1 is everyone is wrong about pre-snap reads. And to demonstrate that, I'd like to start off by asking you guys, what coverage do you think the defense is in? Conventional wisdom might say there are 2 high safeties, so this is going to be either cover 2 or cover 4. Well, that is incorrect. The defense is actually in cover 3. And the reason that this is cover 3 is because of something called base align. Hopefully everyone knows this, but in your coaching adjustments on defense, one of the simplest ways to disguise your coverage is to put your alignment on base. Lots of blitzes, lots of meta defenses require you to be on base align. On base align, you won't be able to read what exact coverage your opponent is in before the snap. And so if I am in cover 3, it will look like this. If I am in cover 2, it will look like this, which is exactly the same as it looked in cover 3. And if I am in cover 4, well, guess what? It looks exactly the same. The alignment of the defenders is not changing. And so if you are trying to rely on pre-snap reads to guess what exact coverage your opponent is in, you are setting yourself up for failure. If you look at this and say, oh, this must be cover 2 or cover 4, let me draw up a cover 2 or cover 4 beater, and then it turns out the defense is in cover 3, you are setting yourself up for failure. And so we need to think of pre-snap reads in a different way. And what I always recommend to people is that we are simply going to make an educated guess about whether we think the defense is in man coverage or zone coverage. Because once we make that educated guess about man or zone coverage, that is going to dictate what kind of route combo that we build. So the natural follow-up question, of course, is how do we know if the defense is in man coverage or zone coverage? And a great way to know is if your opponent is in base aligned defense, which again, as you can see right here, is going to cause the defenders to be lined up the exact same way regardless of the coverage, it is most likely going to be zone coverage. If your opponent is just a psycho, they could run base aligned man coverage, but base aligned man coverage does not allow their defenders to press the receivers off the line. It's just really easy to beat base aligned man coverage. And so most of the time, if it's base alignment, it is going to be zone coverage. Now, if your opponent is in default alignment, that of course changes things up a little bit. And that's where the more conventional wisdom on pre-snap reads could apply. But most of the time, if you're going against someone good, if they are on default alignment, they are going to be in man coverage. If we look at this right here, pre-snap, in my opinion, this very obviously looks like man coverage because each defensive back is pressed up directly across from each receiver. That is an obvious sign of man coverage, and it's going to happen when they are default aligned. Now, on default alignment, if we put the defense into, say, a cover 3 sky, well, in this case, the defensive backs are no longer pressed up directly across from the receivers. And so we'd say this is probably going to be zone coverage because if people are playing backed off man coverage, that again is going to be super easy to beat. Now, in the rare case where your opponent does press their cover 3 and you're like, wow, I don't know if this is cover 3 or cover 1. Honestly, we don't know. If you want, you can learn all the little intricacies of exactly how to read the defense's pre-snap if your opponent is in default alignment. But honestly, just saying I'm not sure is perfectly fine. Pre-snap reads don't have to be super complicated. You just have to make your best educated guess about whether it's man coverage or zone coverage. And even if you're wrong, that's perfectly okay because of secret passing tip number 2, which is build route combos that beat every coverage. If we build route combos that beat every coverage, then our pre-snap reads don't even matter that much. And so let's look at an example of a route combo that beats every coverage. And so right now I'm in gun doubles. And so if I was to simply set up something similar to Y sail, which is super popular to run out of 2x2 sets, something like this, maybe the corner route would be a little bit deeper, but something like this is like a Y sail concept. And what do we have on the field? We have 2, potentially 3 routes that can beat man coverage. We have the corner route, the drag, and the deep dig that can all beat man coverage. And then if it's zone coverage, we have a flood concept on the right side And then we have a backside dig to kind of fill in the empty space over the middle if the user ends up running with either the drag or the corner route. And so this route combo can beat any coverage in the game. If it's cover 2, we have the high-low on the flood concept on the right side. If it's cover 3 or cover 4, we have the flood concept on the right side. If it's cover 0, we have 3 man-beating routes. If it's cover 1 or cover 2 man, we again have 3 man-beating routes. And so I don't really care that much what coverage the defense is in because we have somebody open every single time. And so if we go ahead and have the defense here, they're just in a cover 3 hard flat, we go ahead and snap the ball. We are going through our read progressions, which is something that we'll talk about in just a little bit. We have our flood concept on the right side, easy yards. Let's say it was cover 2 instead, and you can decide whether you think it should be cover 2 with hard flats or not hard flats. Here we have cover 2 with hard flats. We build the exact same route combo, and once again, we're going to see that in this case, we have the flood concept getting our tight end wide open along the sideline. Easy enough. We can switch over to man coverage. We can switch over to, looks like I've got cover 2 man right here. We can build the exact same route combo. And I don't even know which player is going to come open. I just know that somebody is going to come open on this play. So we go ahead, in this case, let's just throw the tight end again. Why not? Just for the sake of consistency. Tight end's open. He beat his man coverage. And so there are route combos in the game, just like this why sale concept, that can beat any coverage. And when you've got route combos that can attack both man coverage and zone coverage at the same time, then those pre-snap reads didn't matter. And so I strongly recommend learning these universal route combos that beat any coverage in the game. But in order to get the full potential out of these universal route combos, we have to talk about secret passing tip number 3, which is always have a read progression. And again, in every ebook we do on Playbook Professor, we label the read progressions on these routes because the read progression is so insanely important. Now, if you're not familiar, a read progression is the order in which you look at the routes. And it's ultimately up to you what you want your read progression to be, but I strongly recommend reading low to high. And I've got plenty of comments arguing with me about this before, but the reason that we read low to high is that we read the routes in order that they come open. So on this particular play, which routes can get open first? It would be the running back on the flat route and the slot receiver on the drag. Those routes are going to get open much sooner than the tight end on the corner route or the outside receiver on the deep dig route. So if you are trying to read high to low, meaning you're going to read your deep routes first, well, if you're going to read the corner route or dig route first and they're covered, by the time you go back to the flat route will have hit the sidelines and lost all his momentum. I mean, sure, he might be standing there on the sidelines for a check down, but to get the most out of the flat route, you want to hit him while he's running his route and he has momentum and can get upfield after the catch. And so the way a read progression would work is if your opponent is in cover 3, I'm just going to, I'm backing him off just, for the sake of example, we have the first read being the running back on the flat route, meaning if the running back is open in the flat, we will hit him with a pass lead and we will just take our yards every time. That's a free 5 yards right there. And of course, the flat route's not gonna be open every single time, but we're gonna look at it every single time and we're gonna throw to it if it's open. The next read is going to be the drag route from our middle receiver. And so if we look at the running back on the flat route, we're like, oh, we don't really wanna throw it. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look at our drag over the middle. And once again, easy yards. And this tip can kind of also be called taking checkdowns to some extent, but the difference is that people think of checkdowns as something that you throw at the end of a play if your primary reads aren't open. So this isn't quite the same thing. This isn't quite, oh, the other routes aren't open, so let me come back to the checkdown. This really is, if these underneath routes are open first, I'm going to throw to them first. Now, of course, if the underneath routes are guarded, that's where we proceed through the progression to our deeper routes. And so if I was to do a full read progression on this, I would label it as the running back is number 1, the slot receiver on the drag is number 2, the tight end on the corner route is number 3, and the outside receiver on the deep dig is number 4. The right side receiver on the streak, he's just a pull route. So you could always peek him while you're looking at the corner route if you want. Like if your opponent somehow leaves the streak unguarded, you can throw it. But for the most part, the streak is not part of the read progression. Like he's not going to be open. His job is to take these outside thirds or outside quarters or whatever it is and push them back to open up space for our corner route coming underneath. And so if we were to continue, with this read progression example, this is a cover 3 hard flat. So in this case, the flat route's going to be guarded and the drag should be guarded because I shaded down. And so in this case, we'll have to go through our reads, flat, then drag, then corner route. So we look right here, flat is covered, drag is covered, corner route is open, and we hit them along the sidelines. And it's happening really fast, which is why you need to practice these read progressions. But once you get comfortable with them, it'll be very easy for you to process all this stuff really quick in your online games. Now, the final read is going to be the deep dig, and it's always tough in practice mode because realistically in a game, that dig route is really going to be coming open if the user leaves the middle of the field. And so for the sake of example, let's just man these guys up. We'll say that this linebacker takes the drag and this linebacker is going to take the corner route. Again, just to kind of simulate, we'll say that one of these guys was the user and it's going to vacate the middle of the field. I know it's not a perfect example, but I think that it's just the easiest way to do it for driving the point home. And so if we go ahead and go through our read progressions one more time, we're going to see that, okay, flat is covered, corner route's covered, they're all covered. And then we have our final read, the backside dig over the middle. And that is a read progression. And read progressions are just so important. And so when you think about what we're combining so far, we're combining universal plays that beat any coverage and combine it with the idea of going through read progressions. Now we're setting ourselves up to always have an open receiver to throw to. And read progressions, guys, it's easy to say you're following the read progressions. It can be a lot harder to do them in actual games. When I do one-on-one coaching, I've had guys come and be like, I don't know how you run this ebook. I don't have anybody open. And so we go and look at their gameplay. And on every single play, I'm like, dude, your first 2 reads are wide open. You have a flat open, you have a drag open, you have a zig open. And the reason you feel like no one's open is because you're going straight to the 3rd and 4th reads. So the read progression truly needs to be a progression. You truly need to start with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, if there is one. If you are just immediately locking on to a particular route, like the tight end corner route or the deep dig route, you are going to have a tough time because you are just ignoring the first half of your read progression. You're ignoring 2 guys who could be wide open on any play. So that is everything you need to know about read progressions. And now let's move on to secret passing tip number 4, which is call plays that make sense for the situation, or in simpler terms, situational play calling. This is another thing that when I do one-on-one coaching, I am shocked at how often people screw this up sometimes. And so let's do a little exercise. Let's say you are in a game, you're on the 30-yard line, and it is 4th and 1. Now, assuming you're not kicking a field goal, what play are you going to call? Hopefully, you know exactly what 1 or 2 or 3 plays you are going to call in that situation. There is no singular right answer, but there are wrong answers. And at least in my opinion, if you said 4 verticals, that is a wrong answer. Because if you just need 1 yard, 4 verticals is not the best play for guaranteeing that you just get 1 yard. A much better answer, and it's not a perfect answer, but if you said something like this play slant flat, this would be a much better answer. Because in this case, everyone is attacking short. Of course, it's not maybe ideal because if your opponent sells out to guard everything short, we don't have anything going deep over the top. So I'm not saying that this play is perfect, but this play is much better for a 4th and 1 situation. But now let's change the scenario. Let's say it is 4th and 20. Would you call quick slants if you have 20 yards to go and it's 4th down? Absolutely not. In that case, 4 verticals would be a little bit more appropriate. It wouldn't be ideal. I'd say maybe we want to throw some comeback routes on the outside, maybe even custom stem those comeback routes up a little bit to see if we can just get them a little bit deeper. And it looks like, oh, there we go. There's my custom stemmed comeback routes. So of course it will depend on the situation, but on 4th and 20, it makes sense to attack with a bunch of vertical routes compared to running quick slants. Hopefully this tip is really obvious to you guys. It should be. You should be sitting here going, yeah, I'm not stupid. Obviously I'm going to call plays that make sense for the situation. But again, I have done one-on-one coaching. I have watched people in their gameplay run 4 verticals on 4th and 1. I have watched people run plays like quick slants that get them nowhere close to the first down. And so maybe it's too extreme to talk about 4th downs with our hypothetical examples, but maybe it'll make more sense if we talk about it on third down. If you think about 3rd and 15, you don't need to get all 15 yards back in one single play. It is actually perfectly okay if you want to run something like a sail concept like we looked at before on 3rd and 15, and you know what this might do? This might get you to 4th and 5 or 4th and 3. I mean, heck, you may get all the yards depending on what ends up being open, but you don't have to get all the yards at once. Situational play calling doesn't necessarily mean run plays that only go to the sticks. Situational play calling is 2 things. It's 1, let's call a play that makes sense for this particular down, and 2, let's call a play that's gonna set me up for success on the next down and the down after that. So it is forward thinking as well. It is thinking, after I call this play, what situation will I be in on the following play? And so while it may seem obvious, situational play calling is always important to talk about in any video going over how to be a better passer. And so with that, we can move on to secret passing tip number 5, which is pocket presence separates good passers from great passers. Now, pocket presence is a weird thing this year because block sheds are stronger than ever, but we still want to think about pocket presence. Especially, you need to be careful if your opponent is QB containing and you find that you have a knack for drifting in the pocket. Having bad pocket presence will result in you doing this. It will result in you snapping the ball, drifting to one side, and going straight into a contain. If your opponent is QB containing, then the absolute worst thing that you can do is drift in the pocket. And so if nothing else, you want to train yourself when you drop back, if nothing else, just stay in the middle of the pocket. That is the number 1 thing. If you can just stay in the middle of the pocket rather than drifting to one side or the other, that is going to set you up for more success. Now, of course, people love trying to scramble around the outside, and I honestly think that's a really bad habit. I'm not saying you can't get away with it, but if you're the type of passer where when you snap this ball, you're always ready to just sprint around the edge, it is a bad habit to be in. I personally would never recommend doing that. But let's talk about some of the other benefits of having good pocket presence. The first is that it always gives you the ability to scramble up the middle. And that is where scrambling can be really powerful. If you have the pocket presence to be able to step up in the pocket, find open space, and then get some yards up the middle with your quarterback, it adds a whole new dimension to your passing game. If you watch the pros play, you will see that they are always ready to step up and scramble up the middle. That is going to be way more deadly against a good player than trying to roll around to the outside. It takes a little bit more skill because while you're looking for the routes developing downfield, you also kind of have to look at how the blocks are developing on your offensive line. And that's just something that the more you play, the better you'll get at, is you're looking at your routes, okay, nothing's open, and then you can just quickly peek your offensive line, and you can kind of see right here who has leverage. You can say, okay, that gap I want to go through is this gap between my left tackle and my left guard, versus over here, it kind of looks like these Ravens guys. You can see how he kind of just shed and kind of filled that gap. That is obviously not a gap we would want to scramble into. And so it's just a skill that the more you do it, and especially if you want to practice it in practice mode, you can always practice it there as well. But you're still going through your read progressions. But if you get through a couple read progressions and it feels like nothing's open or you're just not happy with any throws, that's where you peek the offensive line and you look for an opportunity to step up and scramble. And of course, it doesn't have to be stepping up and scrambling either, especially if your opponent has like a QB spy on the field. It could always just be a step up and look for something to come open late. But it's very important that you don't drop too far back. There is a reason that when you watch the pros pass, most of the time, they are trying to stay within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Not only does it allow them to have the option to scramble, but it also is going to cause their blockers to hold their blocks longer. And so there are tons of different reasons why we want to maintain good pocket presence. It allows us to avoid drifting into contains. It allows our O-line to hold their blocks longer. It allows us to scramble up the middle, and it also just makes our throw shorter. If you think about the quarterback throwing from 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage versus throwing 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, being 10 yards further back, that's just more time the ball is in the air and more time for defenders to react to the ball and break on the ball and make a play on the ball and maybe intercept the ball. And so There are so many different reasons why we want to maintain good pocket presence, and that's going to allow us to get the best results possible from every passing play. And so with that, we can move on to secret passing tip number 6, which is pass leads turn interceptions into completions, or in some cases, pass leads turn interceptions into touchdowns. So on offense, I have us in our same universal route combo from before. I just have the tight end on a shorter corner route this time. And I'm going to put the defense in a cover 3 hard flat. And the reason I'm talking about pass leads, guys, is that I have had DMs and comments, and even in one-on-one coaching, I've had people tell me pass leading is not necessary. They're like, I win all my games and I never use pass leads. And I just want to tell you guys why, frankly, that's completely wrong, and you absolutely should be pass leading, and it makes a massive, massive difference. And so right here, I'm going to throw to my tight end on the corner route, and I'm not going to pass lead. I'm going to simply press the A button. And right here, you can see that, well, that was a pretty easy knockout by the defender. And maybe you're saying, oh, you threw it too soon. And so we'll go ahead and run this again. I'll make sure the tight end gets through his break a little bit more. And once again, we're not going to pass lead. We're just going to press the A button. We press the A button, and once again, it is a knockout. And right there, we definitely threw it after he got through his break. What is happening is if you don't pass lead the ball, it is simply going to lead the tight end on whatever route he's already running. So right here, he already got through his break. We were still holding it. We didn't throw it until now. And this is a route combo that should get the tight end open because we're using a streak to push back the defender in the outside third. However, because we didn't pass lead, the ball went straight into where the cornerback already is, and now he forces the knockout. Now we're going to do the exact same thing, but we are actually going to use pass leads. And so I'm going to, again, put the defense in cover 3, same route combo, and this time, after he gets to his break, we're going to pass lead the ball down and outside. And look at how huge of a difference that made. And by the way, guys, this is pass leading. This is just pointing the left stick in whatever direction we want to pass lead. This is not anything crazy. This is not free forming, which we will talk about. This is just pass leading, which is just pointing the left stick. By pass leading this ball, we are putting the ball in a spot where the defender has no chance to make a play on the ball. Look at the difference. Think about where the ball went when we didn't have a pass lead on the previous rep, and look at where the ball goes when we do use the pass lead on this rep. It is a night and day difference. We are catching that ball with like 6 or 7 yards of separation from that defender over top who forced the knockout on the previous rep where we did not have a pass lead. And the simplest rule of thumb for where should you pass lead the ball is you should just pass lead away from wherever the defender is, and ideally also in the direction that your receiver is moving. And so you may be like, oh, well, the defender is over top, I should pass lead it down and to the left away from him. Well, if your receiver is moving to the right, you don't want to have a pass lead to the left. And so the number 1 rule is away from the defender, but the second rule is away from the defender and in the direction your receiver is already moving. And when you do that, that is going to give you the best pass lead possible. And so again, right here on this particular corner route, we're going to pass lead this ball down and outside to keep it away from the defender. We have an easy completion. And if it ends up being man coverage or something, and there's a trailing defender, like let's say if it was man coverage and we were just trying to hit like the drag route, then we would just lead the ball. Like, so again, let's just look at our wide receiver for a moment. If it was man coverage and we wanted to pass lead the ball to the drag, we would simply lead the ball straight to the right because he's moving right and his defender will be on the left. And in this particular case, I don't know if that guy's actually going to be able to separate against Marlon Humphrey because Marlon Humphrey actually has a man coverage ability. So we'll do Gesicki on the drag instead. And the same principle will apply where with Gesicki on the drag, his trailing defender is on the right. And so we pass lead it to the left. I may have been up and to the left in that case. Ideally, it would be straight to the left, but that's how it is just against man coverage is you'll put it in the exact direction that your receiver is moving because most likely that trailing defender will be in the exact opposite direction. And then, of course, like we looked at when it's zone coverage, and 9 times out of 10, the most important pass leads are going to be on these like streak and corner route combos. It's just going to be a pass lead down and outside. If you can get used to this pass lead down and outside, it will completely change how you throw the ball and how you use all these route combos. And you're going to see that with pass leads, guys become way more open because you are leading them into the open space. And so that brings us to secret passing tip number 7, which is that freeforming is overpowered when used correctly. And if you're not familiar, freeforming is the fact that we can use the left trigger or L2 to give ourselves these super pass leads and put the ball in a spot where only our receiver can catch it. It is a little bit risky, but it's very powerful again when used correctly. And so to demonstrate it, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move these defenders out of the way. And what freeforming is doing is whenever you pass lead the ball, there is a dark circle. EA calls it the shaded ellipse. There's a dark circle around your receiver. That is the region in which you can do a normal pass lead, where if you're just pointing with the left stick, that is the area in which you can lead the ball. Freeforming allows us to go beyond the shaded ellipse. And so I have the defense just blitzing right here. I'm just gonna freeform a pass to Chase, and it's probably gonna miss. I'm not trying to complete this. I'm just trying to show you how a freeform allows us to move our reticle a little bit beyond the shaded ellipse. And so if I go ahead and snap this ball, I'm just gonna kind of freeform this outside. And again, that's a miss, that's okay. But did you guys see? Go back and watch the video again, put it in slow-mo if you have to. We got the reticle outside of the shaded ellipse. And so let's make sure we have our settings set up so that we can even do that. And then we'll talk about how to get the most out of it. So if you want to freeform, your passing type must be on placement and accuracy or placement. It must be on one of these two. If you're on classic or revamped, you cannot freeform. The second thing is that you must have your pass lead increase on small, medium, or large. Now, medium and large are essentially worthless. You'll just overthrow everything. So you really need to be on small. If you're on none, then you won't be able to freeform, because what this setting is doing is it's saying how far outside the shaded ellipse am I allowed to go. Small basically says you are allowed to go a small distance outside the shaded ellipse when you freeform. And then medium or large, that just means you can go an insane distance outside the shaded ellipse, and that's why you'll pretty much always overthrow everything. If you're on none, you will not be able to get your reticle outside the shaded ellipse, which means you won't be freeforming. So make sure this is on small. Finally, the reticle speed is just how fast the reticle will move. And ultimately, it's up to you what this is. I leave it on 7 out of 20, which is the default, and it's been really, really good for me. And so let's talk about freeforming and when to use freeforming. Most of the time, I only use freeforming on deep balls, because if you use a freeform on any other throw, it's probably gonna miss. And so let's go, to start, I'm gonna keep the safety out of the way. And we are going to look at Jamar Chase on the streak on the outside. And we're gonna snap this ball. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna freeform this up and over the top. You guys could see how the reticle was moving outside the shaded ellipse. And when you freeform these balls over the top, you pretty much make it, I won't say impossible, but you make it almost impossible for the defender to make a play on the ball. And of course, Jamar Chase has some space, but when we freeform this over the top, it just puts it in a spot where only he can catch it. And if we do a normal pass lead on these, there's a high risk of the defender making a play on the ball. And so we're gonna do the exact same thing. And I'm gonna once again, just move this safety out of the way so we can just focus on the streak. And this time, I'm just gonna do a normal pass lead. I'm not going to use a freeform. And you saw right there, I did a pass lead up and outside. And so maybe you say, oh, you should have just done a pass lead straight up. But I did a pass lead up and outside because that's where the leverage was. He had outside leverage, and of course he had him beat deep. And so I pass led up and outside. And without the freeform, Wiggins is able to come in and make a play. But again, if we freeform, it allows us to put the ball far enough out in front of our receiver that the defender has no chance to make a play. And so one more time, I'm going to freeform this ball up and outside. Well, he actually got bagged that time, and so this might be guarded regardless. Oh, and it still worked. So that's the power of freeforming, guys, is right there. Even though he got completely bagged off the line this time, we were able to use the freeform to put the ball out in a spot where only our receiver can catch it. If this is a normal pass lead, this ball is easily intercepted. But look at where the freeform put the ball. It put it outside and out in front of him. And so deep balls are without a doubt the best time to use a freeform. And so if it's man coverage and you're trying to hit someone over the top a freeform over the top is what you'll want to do. Now, the other way that you can use freeforming is to lead your players into open space against zone coverage. And again, this is only something that we would really want to do if it is a deep route. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and put the defense in a cover 2 shell, and I'm going to have both the tight end and the right side receiver on streaks. And in this particular case, the tight end streak is going to be close enough to the safety on the right side in the deep half that you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable throwing to the streak unless you can freeform it to the middle of the field. And if we go ahead and snap this ball, what we can see is that if we freeform this pass away from the safety, we now let our tight end into open space and we have a touchdown. If we don't freeform, if we just pass lead, this is going to be a knockout or an interception by the safety. But the pass lead allowed us to put it so far inside that instead we have turned that incompletion or interception into a touchdown. And so that is the other power of freeforming. And again, on short routes, it's usually going to be an overthrow. This is really something I only use on deep routes or streaks. But in these particular situations, if you see that your guy has leverage, you can use freeform passing, lead your guy into open space, and like I said, turn that interception into a touchdown. So those are the 7 secrets to master passing in Madden 25. If you got value from this video and you want to take your Madden game to the next level, then you should definitely consider checking out our website, playbookprofessor.gg. Every week we upload 4 new advanced Madden tip videos to our film room section, and every couple weeks we put out a new offensive or defensive scheme to help you guys dominate the competition. Members get access to all of the film room videos and all of the schemes on the site, so if you're trying to get better at Madden and win more games, playbookprofessor.gg is the place to be. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time.